Hello, everyone. I'm Amelia Niger, the Education Specialist with the Oracle Applications and Technology Users Group. I'm very excited to welcome you all to today's session, The Intersection of Upgrades and Migration, Choosing the Right Path. Before we dive in and get started, I'd like to briefly introduce everyone to OATUG in case you're new to our programming. We're a community of Oracle users, and we provide education, networking, and support to our members. Be sure to save the date for our Ascend conference this year. It will be at the ARIA in Vegas from June 12th to the 15th. Just a quick reminder for today's webinar, you will be on mute throughout the session. However, you are welcome to send questions at any time through the question box in your control panel, which we will address at the end. You will also receive a brief survey at the conclusion of this webinar. Your response will help us shape the future of our education. If you are interested in receiving CPE credit, your survey response will be required. You will also need to be logged into the session for at least 50 minutes and post at least one question. We are recording this session, and the recording as well as the slide deck will be available to OATUG members in the knowledge base. You'll see the link for that in the chat area. And now I'd like to share some information about our speaker. We have Mahesh Vanapalli, who's the Senior Oracle Applications DBA from Datavale. So thank you so much for presenting, Mahesh, and you can take it away.
Thank you, Amelia. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. This is Mahesh Vanapalli. I've been working with EBS applications for past 20 years. I've been part of implementations and data center migrations, cloud migrations, performance tuning exercises, cross-platform migrations, and whatnot. Anything that is related to EBS and tightly integrated EBS applications, that is EPM, OBIE, Golden Gate, in various scenarios with respect to EBS. So that's about me. And this particular slide, we are talking about what is Datavale and what we offer as part of our professional and managed services. As you can see, my experience, and this is correlated on the slide, across all Oracle prepackaged applications, anything that is with DB and replication binaries and below. We have a pool of SMEs who, at various levels, applications, databases, and tuning and cloud and whatnot. We are capable of delivering these services, and from that experience, we've learned few things in the past 2 years when it comes to migrating EBS application to cloud platforms. And in our experience, what are the different questions that our customers come across, and how are we helping? And in this session, we'll be looking at what we learned and how we helped customers go through the journey and make it less stressful with this whole process, and with a zero incidents post-migration scenario, whatever may be the challenge. We'll take you through that whole journey and how they reach that state. Yeah, a little bit about why cloud and why EBS to cloud. As of now, more than 60% of workloads in some sort of cloud platform, let it be Amazon, AWS, or Oracle OCI. But when it comes to EBS, this journey is more popular in the last 2 to 3 years compared to before. Before that, all other IT platforms were moving, but EBS, it picked up a lot in the last 3 years, and this there's a lot of depending on how complex EBS environment is, the migration project and the size of the database and the architecture that is in place. Looking at various things, EBS is a very critical application, and the challenges are the same as well. So the key thing that we observed with several customers is that when the support of EBS application / database, yes, there are two challenges. If we just need to take the application as it is, that application version is compatible state, no support issues, and the database version is in supported state, no upgrades needed. It's a challenge is just taking it and placing it on chosen cloud platform. That itself is one challenge, but when it comes to, let's say, if the application or the database is on a prior version, which is already getting to a state where, like when I was presenting this 6 months back, still we were in 2021, there is 12.1.3 support. Okay, do I migrate first and then upgrade, or upgrade first and then migrate? Was a more routine question at that time, but now we passed 2021 and we're into 2022. So application level, we're already into MDS program. But when it comes to database, similar way, that is database 12c extended support is ending July 2022. So the combination already application you're passed. If you're on 12.1.3, if you're on 12.2, you're in good shape for the application, but the database, if you're on 12.1.2, it's reaching a date and you have like 4 months time to upgrade. And we are helping some customers just go through that journey, upgrade the database, and be in compliance with the overall support status. So that's the key thing to understand here, is that applications 12.1.3, if you're on 12.1.3, it's past support, that is 2021 December. And if it is database, you're coming to extended support will end on 2022 July. So with that said, the main challenge becomes, if you're on 12.2 dot, let's say 4.5 or all the way up to 12.11 version, and the database being 19c already. If you're on that version already, your question is more of lift and shift. It doesn't involve any challenge with the upgrades and performance tunings and other things. But if you need to perform, let's say, DB upgrade, my application is 12.2, database is still 12.1, not 19c, right? Because we see that customers going through this challenge and trying to wrap up and complete this before July. But right now, you're pretty close to the date, and even if you pick it up, if you haven't started already, you may not have enough time to get the database upgrade done before 2022 July. So that's just related to application and DB upgrade. If the upgrade is needed, we have to do both, but the question is about, do I do this before or after? So based on current state and date and how much time is left, if it needs to be the data center migration, we've helped customers where, like, okay, I just have this data and I need to meet this date, I don't have an option. Versus, no, I have 12 months from now or 18 months from now, I have to come out of the data center. Let's plan, do a POC, and then migrate for all the environments, right? So in any case, the cloud migration is nothing short of, like, depending, even if you have 3 to 4, 3 non-prod and 1 prod, you're looking at least 5 to 6 months minimum migration time overall from the get-go. That's being very, very aggressive. But if you add DB upgrade or an application upgrade, depending on what is needed in addition to the data center migration or cloud migration, it's going to, whether you do it in sequence or whether you do it parallel, right? There's a few details we can talk about and see how it helps, right? So the main criteria to consider when we are doing both, right? If it is both, how do we address, and what are the things that we can review? So the key thing is that number of testing cycles. Like, if we do it in sequence, we are expanding the number of testing cycles, and if you have one fit and one UAT for each change, and then for each cycle you need 2 weeks or 4 weeks, you're just expanding the overall project twice. Just considering the testing, let it be manual let it be automated testing, and in that testing, load test versus regression test, because this is crucial as we are going to a totally new platform and new infrastructure. All the teams working with this platform, maybe they are familiar with the Azure, whatever target platform it is, but there is always, what we see is there is always first time scenario for these applications, and how it performs, what is the observability, and what do we learn from this application, various things. So if we do it parallel, we are reducing the number of testing cycles, but at the same time, the issue could come from either the platform challenge or application upgrade challenge. So if we combine both, one roadblocker can stop both projects, meaning if we do it together, yes, it's great, and it definitely saves like 2 months of effort for the testing team, business, whatnot. But when we combine those, if there is a showstopper from the application upgrade, or if there is a showstopper from infrastructure related changes and everything that we need to do, they're tied to each other, and the progress gets impacted. This will be a good scenario if you don't have a dead set date to come out of the data center. Then given that, and depending on what application version you are choosing to upgrade to, like say you want to go to 12 to 11, or you want to go to 12 to 10, right? If it is 12 to 10, well, it's been there for at least 6 months or 8 months. We don't have to worry about something new to happen, and Oracle is going to create a bug for that and work on the issue, right? But if you're going to 12 to 11, there may be a possibility it may take a little bit longer to get that resolved, if at all, if it is applicable to you, right? But if you're not going for any feature changes and you're going to a version which is already safe, overall risk is reduced, and you don't see an issue there, right? And when we take this migration, and when we do this in parallel, meaning both we'll do it at the same time, like let's take the scenario of, okay, I'll migrate the database to cloud platform, and once it is there, I'll continue to do the upgrade, and then only I'll release the instance. So another key thing that we come across is the overall downtime needed, right? So if we take just the database upgrade, EBS, depending on scenarios, if the downtime is available for the vast majority, and they can take 48 hours or 24 hours for the database upgrade. But if it is application in DB, depending on the scenario, the downtime changes, but usually it could take more than 48 hours if you're going from 12.1 to 12.2. How you conduct the upgrade, it varies, but overall, if you're doing this together, your downtime is longer, right? One versus the other. But at the same time, you can do it in a way that migrated this week. In non-prod, you can exercise this in a different ways, but when it comes to prod, if you can allocate that longer time, do everything together, that's the best way. But if you can't do that, it is best to just handle them separately, so that you have control on the deliverable and you meet the required. So that is migrate first, migrate production, complete the migration, make sure it is smooth, no surprises there, then pick up an upgrade. That way you're already past that support state, wherever you are, you're just expanding it by 6 months or whatever time it takes to upgrade the application / DB, versus to dealing with delaying the both projects and the increasing the cutout downtime. But if the version is lower version and the business is okay with keeping the overall downtime to being higher, you're good with upgrading and migrating at the same time. Okay. So then the next question becomes, okay, we are current with supportability. right? There are no questions. I'm all good with 12 to star and database level 19, but now I need to go to cloud. So this is the most common question, and various ways with each customer we've experienced different things. So picking the right target cloud platform, right? How do I do that? What are the minimum things that I need to do, and what is involved in it? So what we have seen with customers is where they felt comfortable doing certain exercises versus when we started the discussion, it wasn't clear. So most common approach and success rate that we've seen is conduct total cost of ownership between the cloud platforms. Right now, there's so many things that we need to check when we perform the total cost of ownership between the cloud platforms. The two key areas that one must look into is the licensing factor, and then identifying the right target cloud infrastructure that meets your performance needs at the database level and application level. And depending on, let's say, if you have rack, and do I need rack when I go to cloud, or can I go without rack now that we can achieve that rack functionality through local HADR and then remove DR and different architecture diagrams, and you can reduce the cost on the licensing part of it, and a number of machines that you need to configure the target structure, right? Because Oracle says rack, I'm taking this an example, rack is not by the book, or rack is not supported on any cloud platform other than OCI. But it is also a fact that on Azure and AWS, through using the third-party solutions, there is rack hosted on it, right? So how are they achieving that if that is needed? And few things to consider while we are choosing the platform. I'll be talking about those scenarios later on as well. What is the entire IT infrastructure footprint? All of them are going to the same cloud platform? Are they going to various cloud platforms? What is my existing resources skill set? And do I need to set up anything from the scratch if I pick this solution? Because EBS is crucial, and for EBS and my performance needs, I need to go to a particular cloud platform. And how about all the interface applications? Where are they going? What is the roadmap and strategy for that, right? So there will be, when it comes to cloud, there will be ingress and egress network bandwidth charges. How is my, what are the different states where other applications will interface with EBS? What is the data transfer rate? So we need to really understand that strategy and compare the same solution after identifying what is my database. If I'm picking one cloud platform, what is my target database host? What is my target application host? What are the underneath the disks that make up my infrastructure? So we have to literally identify all those and then do the licensing analysis as well. Given there is a 50% discount when it comes to core processors use, core process and licenses associated with it, and if we take that to any cloud platform, Oracle will be saying, nope, you don't have the discount anymore, which means the licensing cost will double. But yes, theoretically that is the case, but when we look at database AWR report, and when we look at existing CPU or existing host CPU RAM utilization over 6 months period and 1 year period, and let's understand what is the average. And when we look at AWR, that is peak business days, that could be workday -2 to workday 3, 4, and then quarterly. So by changing the range, we can definitely see what is the absolute that we need to have with respect to CPUs? And with modern CPUs and cloud capabilities, increasing them as we need it, doesn't have to buy once and then stick with it, right? Most of the on-prem scenarios, it's done more so that, okay, we can buy this and we need 2 years growth and we anticipate the CPU to be more, and the licenses are bought accordingly. And when we go back and check, sometimes we see that, oh, overall CPU utilization is 30%, 40%. And when we combine that with the analysis of the IO throughput and CPU utilization, we can come back and say, hey, yes, you have licensed for 16, but you've licensed for 16, but you're paying for 8, but you say you have 16 CPU, but after doing all this analysis, you need only 6. So you don't even have to pay for 8. We've seen those scenarios as well. So it's important to understand all these factors and do that math, and looking at the licensing cost, looking at the infrastructure cost, and looking at one key thing is looking at the Oracle support cost, right? Oracle support cost is coming from your initial cost and 22% of that initial cost. So putting all this, there's a math behind it, and putting all this, and then clearly looking at those numbers. If I opt this, this is my cost. If I opt this, this is my cost. And cloud platform service providers are helping with those analysis. All we need to do is reach out to the appropriate person. Hey, this is the workload. What is my cost if I choose you with the right architecture? And similarly, do the other analysis, and then put them side by side, and based on the details, it becomes easy to pick, right? Because nowadays, with respect to stability and all, they're close enough, right? And they have thousands of customers on each platform, not for the EBS, but overall the cloud platform and its stability I'm referring to. But so yeah, by doing the total cost of ownership and reviewing these aspects, you'll be able to make a call on where you should go, why you should go, what will be your cost, what will be the changes that you have to deal with the cost, right? I named few, and as we go through the rest of the slides, you will see more details around it, what in-depth details around it. And then again, what is involved in migration and timeline expectations? We've seen anywhere from, when it comes to cloud migration, we've seen anywhere from 6 months to 1 year. If it is just like lift and shift and taking 3 non-prod and 1 prod, in which at least two testing cycles with regression and load test, given certain prerequisites, that is the network and firewall that is needed between on-prem and cloud. If it is there, it just speeds up. But if you're starting from scratch, it takes longer, right? Because the contracts and the networks and firewalls, it does add a little bit of time upfront. So overall downtime needed for cutover, and the key thing is okay, we chose the platform. What is my data migration approach, right? If it is less than 1 terabyte, it is not so complicated. If it is, let's say 30 terabyte, 50 terabyte, 60 terabyte EBS database, how do we make sure that you take the data from on-prem to cloud and at the initial stage and keep it in sync? There are several ways you can achieve that. Let it be Golden Gate, Data Guard, Export Import, Golden Gate, Armin, Golden Gate, and there are some third-party tools which will help with that as well, in keeping the data sync. And some cloud platforms they have their own tools like ASR and Cloud Endure on AWS, OCA, zero downtime, various, depending on the cloud platform, you have a way to migrate the data with a minimum effort. I mean, you will start the activity up front, you keep it in sync with the target cloud platform, and then when cutover comes, your database is available and you perform the cutover, right? So that is also important to identify. That determines how much downtime do you need when you actually cut over to cloud, right? So the data migration approach is linked with the overall downtime needed during the cutover. And it is important to see what versions you have, because based on the versions you have and the target platform you're choosing, like I'll take an example of, like, if you want to take 11.204 EBS instance to Exadata on OCI. OCI Exadata 11.204 by end of 2022, Exadata doesn't no longer offer 11G version. It will be only 19C version. So if you have to take your environment from here to there, you really need to figure out how you're going to get to the right version and take care of it ahead of time. So looking into those details will help see the challenges and obstacles that you may come across at a later time. So the next few slides, you'll see what are the various things that you have to review, right? So we talked about doing both app and DB upgrade and migration associated challenges. We talked about, okay, I'm in supported versions. I don't have to do any app and DB upgrade. I just have to lift and shift. In both cases, we need to look into certain details to be comfortable with the overall migration approach. So in this, what are those 7 essential elements that we need to look at? The first one being the interface jobs. And I'll take you through, and within each interface job, what are the things that we need to look at, and application versions and certification status, right? So we talked earlier a little bit about our application and database, but we need to look at our OS supportability, and we need to look at are the interface applications that we may have, that, okay, if I'm upgrading this, is there an interface application that can still work with my upgraded version? We need to make sure all the interface applications and the compatibility, we'll talk about that. And the current storage solution, on-prem, it is what we choose and whatever is purchased, and it is easy enough to decide which one you want to opt for and for how long you want to opt for. But when we go to cloud, you have certain options, that's it. And you have to choose from what is there, and associated cost, limitations, and how it changes your operational activity, and then how it changes your storage infrastructure costs. Like if you have any advanced storage solutions on-prem, do you need to have the same advanced solutions on cloud? And if so, what is available? And as part of the POC, you will be testing that as well. And then data migration strategy, which is basically taking your data from on-prem to cloud, and how do you keep it in sync throughout the project? And how do you create your non-prod environments on cloud from that instance, which is in sync with the on-prem environment, and how you're going to do it during the cutover. So that is also key strategy that needs to look at. And the storage footprint. On-prem, if you have advanced solutions, your production is, let's say, 10 terabyte, and your non-prod is less than 100 MB. You can take a snap and mount it, and unless it is your performance environment, even some of the solutions even meet that requirement, taking a snap and then mounting it and just consuming less than 100 MB, and then you don't have. But when you go to cloud, this all becomes, depending on the solution you're choosing, but more often it becomes just like if you have 4 environments, your storage footprint just for EBS is like 4 times that or five times. So that needs to be reviewed, and how it impacts your operational activity. Let's say if you have a big database and you need to clone it. Okay, right now you're doing this with Snap in less than 30 minutes and do the application configuration in less than so and so time. How is that going to change going forward when I need to clone? Do I need to revert back to RMAN, or do I need to revert back to, depending on the storage solution you have, what can be done? That needs to be reviewed. Testing strategy, again, this is going to be the key. At the 2 scenarios that we took, whether we do them one after the other or whether we do them together, it just gets duplicated versus one time and with associated risks that we need to review and accept or acknowledge. Sometimes there may be no risk based on the versions you're going to and other things. Just capturing that detail, right? And we'll talk about what are the details that we need to pay attention to. And then more often we see that, okay, the big challenge is taking them and putting them there, but what is my future state, my operational readiness on cloud platform? Because these are the things that you may have to work with other teams, wherein, okay, do you have the new backup tool identified on your cloud platform? Do you have new monitoring tool identified on cloud platform, if at all, if any? And is this going to work with my existing ITSM ticketing system, right? So the operational state readiness, which includes cloning and patching and failover tests and various things that you have to cover. So I'll take you through each one. So when we look at interface jobs, and their connection methods. The reason being, whether it is API based, whether it is DB linked based, or is it a file transfer based, for each one of them, you have to identify, okay, I'm taking this, I'm putting there, I'm staying for file based, API based, I'm changing to the new location, new server, I'm good. But when it comes to DB link, if you have certain process and application interface going through DB link, now, when you move your EBS, is that interfacing application going with EBS, or is this going to some other location? And if so, any job that you may have running right now in 2 minutes or minutes could turn into 30 minutes and 60 minutes if this is not captured. I mean, most of the time when application teams, oh, I ran this job and it worked, right? That if we take that approach, it will be risky. It needs to be, I've executed this job and I processed 1,000 records or million records, and it took 2 minutes. And when we perform the test, it's the stats that we need to capture and make sure. But we've seen once or twice, like, okay, this is not a KPI, right? This is not identified as a key performance indicator, but when we go live and they come back and say, oh, this is taking longer, and we go back and look at KPI and it's not listed, right? So it is important to, this way, if we do this upfront, then we know, okay, DB link, it is a known issue. We have to rewrite the code to make sure that entire data is shipped from one database to other database and the processing happens internally, which will may or increase a little bit of time, but it's not going to be hours, but at least still in minutes. But it needs fixing, right? That needs to be identified in all these scenarios to be listed and looked into the detail. That way, you know that these are all my KPIs and these are all the connectivity methods, and I validated it, and I validated with the volume and stats. I'm good with interface jobs. You don't have a P1 post go live. And it takes some effort, but it doesn't take tons of effort to put the list together, identify this list, and talk through the scenarios. So we've spent some time around this. Again, right now, 12.1.3 past support, it's already into market-driven support. So that now it is more of like, okay, if I need to go to cloud, and then do the upgrade. So you have a new benchmark on cloud, and when you upgrade, you can compare with that on cloud benchmark. Versus if you change both at the same time, you don't have a benchmark to compare against on cloud platform. So at this juncture, it seems more appropriate to migrate first and then do the upgrade. That way you're not dealing with any tight deadlines and you're doing the right things as you go along. And if you come across any roadblocks with any particular item, you have more control in solving it with one item in that group. We talked about this. Yeah, in this, the key is talking through not just the application in DB, it's OS, it's interface applications and their compatibility with the versions that you're upgrading and how it changes when you put this database on cloud, right? That's going to be the important thing to look at. So the current storage solution, on-prem, there are tons of solutions available, but depending on which cloud platform you choose, again, the performance-wise, all cloud platforms are capable of perform whatever throughput you need, but identifying what that is and that being your cost-effective solution meets your requirement, that's the exercise here. Because it doesn't just go by the size of it, right? So we need to take our peak loads, look at database throughput need, identify appropriate disks based on the cloud platform, and do the cost analysis according to that. If we just go by the I need this many terabytes and this is okay, and if we put a number against it, you're going to have the double the storage cost later on once you perform the POC test and all. So it is important to do this upfront analysis and then complete the total cost of ownership. Otherwise, these numbers can change a lot. And again, in this exercise, depending on the cloud platform and the network throughput that is needed from the database host, that can change the virtual machine that you're going to select. You may have 12 on-prem, you may not have a VM or instance or EC2 something that gives you 12 CPUs on whatever cloud platform. So you may have to go to 16 and then figure out how am I going to restrict it to only 12, thinking that, okay, I need 12 on-prem and cloud as well. And it is important to look at these details as part of the analysis, and looking at AWR, you'll be able to identify what that is, right? And so the data migration strategy, again, this is not so much of challenge when it comes to smaller databases, but if they're more than 5 terabyte or 10 terabyte, the challenge becomes bigger. But again, there are standard ways if you have a data guard, you're adding another data guard on target cloud platform, keep it in sync. There are various ways to solve the problems here, but it is important to identify that, exercise that as part of exercise in the sense like you're not doing the cutover, but you are cutting off and saying, okay, I got my data and I can consider my database to be available on cloud within 15 minutes of shutting down my on-prem, right? That's going to be the key. And because post that, everything else starts, your application configurations, load balancer configurations, and whatnot, right? So, and at the same time, as you're planning for your project, it is important to understand how you're going to create your non-prod environments on cloud. And this strategy basically defines that. And the POC, right? When it comes to EBS Cloud, POC is nothing but almost like a UAT exercise. That resonates with most of our customers. When we say POC, they'll take, oh, we can place it and prove that it can. No, it's about place it, test it, and confirm. right? Because any architecture change, any component change changes your total cost, right? So it is important to perform POC that way. And storage footprint, right? Like we talked about number of non-prod environments. It could change the just overall storage. Consider that in non-prod. Identify what is your, you may not need a production-like performance for all non-prod. You need to have production-like in only one environment, that is in performance environment, and dev test 20%, 25% of performance is okay, or 50% as of performance is okay. So you choose appropriate storage for the appropriate environment. So that changes your total cost too, right? And how you clone it, that is another key item to look at, right? So it is important to look at those aspects as well. So the testing strategy, again, KPI doesn't need any explanation, but it does need, we need to include regression and load test, right? And when we do this, if it is a global instance and users are coming across various networks, it is important to test that from each market, because earlier you're within the data center, your VPN and the interconnect, it makes it easy. But when you take it to the cloud, you're going to cloud using your existing bandwidth network connection. So how is this impacting your customers, right? End users, and what impact or what slowness they may experience. Do you need to right size your bandwidth going from your on-prem to cloud, whatever may be the scenario? So KPI, but at the same time, define all these KPIs with volumes and stats, run this in POC itself, and validate the overall performance, right? And when you're building the first environment, build it like production, right? Or more or less make that as your production in future, right? That way, you know, the connectivities, firewalls, performance. I've tested this in this particular server on cloud platform, so I don't have any surprises with the firewalls and performance and whatnot. If someone made a mistake or anything like that. So start with the POC as if it is production-like environment, right? And then we've seen this gets to the last, but now we are, wherever we are working, we are addressing that as part of the analysis and say, hey, I know this is important. Let's talk about this. How is this failover test mandatory as part of your test? RTO, recovery time objective, and recovery point objective. Am I meeting those needs, whatever cloud platform that I'm choosing, right? And do we need to perform that test as part of the POC, right? We talk about those details. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, what is the backup solution that we are going to have on cloud platform? Am I meeting all my backup and restore policies? What is the solution that I'm going to use? Because there may be a scenario that all other infrastructure is going to one cloud platform, and then EBS is going to another cloud platform. On this cloud platform, you may not have the enterprise solution that is there for backup. So you may have to identify your own solution there that works with your budget and RTO, RPO scenarios. That needs to be identified upfront. And monitoring tools, okay, if it is OEM, where is this going to stay? Again, co-location versus isolated environment. If it is co-located, everything is in one place, you're taking OEM from on-prem to there. No, I'm going to have OEM here, EBS from other cloud platform, and my other databases on some other location. So where are you going to put your OEM on, right? So that needs to be reviewed as well. Understand the detail behind it, right? And then how are you going to clone your environment? You may have like, okay, per month I need to perform 4 clones. Right now it takes me 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours to perform a clone. Once you put it there, what is my new clone SLA? Is it still 4 hours, 6 hours? No, it is going to be RMAN, backup, restore, recover. It's going to be 12 hours or 16 hours. Is that okay for application team, right? And then one key thing to note is, if your application theme is like 5 by 16 by 5 or 12 by 5, depending, they don't need access to non-prod environment during the night hours or during the weekend, right? If they're 24 by 7, it's great. You don't have any feasibility with the hibernation. But if you have a scenario where it is 5 by 12, 5 by 16, or 5 by 8, you can shut down all your non-prods and save your cost on cloud platforms with respect to compute, not with the storage, but you can save cost on the compute. And if you implement it, like your compute cost, whatever that is, you can slash it by 50%. You can do that analysis and estimate that in the total cost of ownership as well. Okay, right now I'm paying for all non-prod and prod, but when I go to cloud, I'm getting this much savings, and for the entire year, if I do this, I will have this much additional savings on the infrastructure as well. And again, the basic cloud capabilities to increase the VM and other things, that doesn't need additional explanation. But with all that flexibility, with the proper planning, it just makes it easier to implement this solution going forward. So by doing so, you can save some cost at the infrastructure level within cloud itself. All right. So by reviewing all these areas, which are concerns right now, but once you go through this set of items, you will understand where your challenge is, if there is any. If there is no challenge, okay, I see all that is there, I understand. And every team that is involved in this migration knows what to expect in their journey. And then the outcome will be much more self-aware, or much more less incident prone post-migration scenario. So by doing this, we'll be able to achieve that smooth transition from on-prem to cloud. Yeah, I mean, so we've done some migrations where we meet that zero downtime and addressed all the challenges that we come across here, and use various tools in achieving that. And depending on the cloud platform and whatnot, we were able to resolve that. Yeah, this is about just that. And at this point, I will pause here. That takes us to the end. Any questions that I can help answer?
All right, thank you so much, Mahesh. Yes, we do have a few questions in the chat here. So I'm going to go ahead and post them into the chat box so everyone can see them. Starting with our first question. We are determining best approach for migrating EXA engineered system to OCI, including DB12C upgrade to 19C. We have 3 non-prod and 4 prod NVS. How long should we expect this to take?
Okay, so Amelia, what is the database version that is mentioned, 12C?
It is, yes, and it's in the chat
Oh,
as well. If you need to see a visual, I know that was a lot of acronyms there.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, I see that now. Yeah, so depending on the size of the database, and if you already adapted the pluggable, non-pluggable database scenario versus you have to do that, and if you have encryption given you have EXA engineered system, depending on the size, this can be done in like 6 to 9 months period. Depending on the size, right? Like how long it's going to take you to take your data. The first environment build itself, because you're on EXA, most probably you're going to EXA, given you are listing as OCI as your target. So that it does not, and with the zero downtime tool that is available with OCI, and you are in good standings with the versions you have. It's just that if you are not pluggable and container database model already, That's the only challenge, or just a step. It's not a challenge, but it just takes time. But overall, you can complete this in 6 to 9 months.
All right, thank you. And the same person also has a follow-up question I just posted. Would the lift shift approach be best for us? We are 12.2.5 shop and plan to upgrade to 12.2.10 or 11 next year once the infrastructure is migrated.
I think given like so between 12 to 10 and 12 to 11, right? If you're planning to implement new features that are introduced in 11, right? You can wait, given that you're not at risk with the supportability, right? On being on 12 to 5. But if you want to implement some new features that are introduced by 11, the 12 to 11 version of it, you can benefit from wait till then. And then 11 is already available, right? Yeah, so 11 is already available. So migrate your environment and handle that 11 upgrade on its own if you're planning to use any new features. If you're not planning to use any new features, and the migration and the upgrade from 12 to 5 to 11 fits your downtime window, you can do it at the same time as well. If you're not using any new features which requires functional testing and the validations and whatnot.
Okay, and they said thank you. Let's see, now would be a great time to submit some more questions into the chat box. At the top, you will see I posted another link in case you're interested in attending our Ascend conference this summer. Okay, we did have another one just pop up. All right, question 3. On the interface area, additional to the performance that we need to consider on your DB links, is there any other challenges in terms of connectivity between cloud and on-premises application?
So I'll take an example of like your single sign-on solution corporate one is still on-prem, and now your EBS is on cloud, right? Where your AD and SSO solution is not present. So they're in two different locations. So now when you are interfacing, earlier both are co-located in the same data center. The number of hops it takes for you to log in, it takes like, let's say less than 1 second. But now that you're separating these applications and they have to go over the network, right? And you may have 2 seconds, 3 seconds delay, right? If that is not something acceptable, right? You have to account for that. And then also you have to, when you're performing the test and capturing the metrics around your performance, you need to make sure you are accounting for, like, if you may have a one common bandwidth between your corporate and the cloud platform, and you are not the only one using that bandwidth. So you need to really make sure on a regular business day, there may be certain batch activities depending on the applications and how data transfer takes place, and there will be a pattern for your network bandwidth usage. And now you're adding additional load, right? They just do, everything can be predicted, but if you pay attention to that network bandwidth and all the interfaces and its time, it is taking time, right? It's the key to make sure the volume and the time is noted as part of the POC. These are the most common issues, like network bandwidth. At times, all of a sudden, some other business unit does something that impacts the overall bandwidth available, and it's a one-time activity, but it still impacted your regular user activity. So that's one thing you just need to account for. And basically KPI and where they're located, co-located versus separated, just doing that discussion itself will, with each interface application interface job, will help you identify those gaps.
All right, we did have a clarifying question. Did I understand you to say there was a challenge / issue with a specific DB link version?
It's not the DB link version. It's the, let's say you have invoicing is done in some other application and you get those invoices from that applications into the EBS, and the process runs. When the process is running, it is looking for the live data on the different system and then coming back and updating EBS system. And if right now they're co-located, now it's the same DB link, nothing changed. You updated the DB link to reflect the cloud. EBS went somewhere else. But now the DB link, now each time a query is executed, to get the details from the other application, it's going to take a long time. It's the latency. It's not the DB link version, because it is the transaction is taking place over the DB link and they are geographically, they're moved to different locations. And based on the number of hops it needs to take, the latency for the response is going to be high. So depending on how many transactions you have to perform like that in that specific job, it could, the seconds can become minutes and minutes can become hours, is the underlying observation. So you could rewrite the code and say, okay, now I'm not doing the process across it. I'll perform one query and bring all the data over here. And then I'm going to perform my processing within the same database, right? So we've come across those scenarios as well.
Thank you, Mahesh, and thank you to our attendees for signing on today. I don't see any more questions coming through the chat here, so that does conclude our webinar for today. Thank you, everyone, for coming out.
Thank you, everyone, for joining the call today.